Guys, this is Banjo. Now we're gonna bring to you guys the in detail, and this time we're gonna go in detail in the red blue Log Horizon deck I have. So with that being said, onto the cards. The first card is a 0/0 red Beach Angel Mariel. The purpose basically she serves in your in the deck is to give all your weapon and magic characters a 500 power boost. Because up to level 3, this is the only card I run that gives your cards a power boost basically. Its second and third ability, the third one is basically a mandatory. So if you mill a climax, it goes into your stock. Because you, when it comes into play, you have to send the top card of your deck into the graveyard or into the waiting room. My bad. And if it's a climax, then it goes into stock. The purpose of the way it helps you out though is if by playing the level 0 Izu, which I'll get into in a bit. Because basically, since it goes into stock, it allows you to pay it out and then search and stuff. The second ability just helps you out milling wise. So if you have a bunch of climaxes in your waiting room and you still have a lot of cards in your deck, you obviously want to get that potential damage out of the way and mill cards out. So you'll mill a potential of 4 cards out. And it can also help you late game if you want to refresh and you have a couple of cards left in your deck and you just play it and mill out. But that's basically the service this card purposes in the deck. Next card, the Full Control Encounter Shiro, 0 Brainstormer. Blue, the purpose basically it's a brainstorm, just like, well, the Mariel, technically it's a pseudo Brainstormer if you want to call it like that, since you get a mill cards. But basically it's just the purpose of this is to mill cards, and then if you get climaxes you draw. Especially helps you out if you're running low on cards in your deck and you want to refresh, or even if you maybe have a lot of climaxes in the graveyard already or in the waiting room and you just want to refresh really fast. So basically that's just the purpose of this. You exchange climaxes for cards in your hand, so card advantage in your hand. And the 1k power boost to the front just helps you out a lot when you have like certain zeros or something. That extra 1k helps you out a lot, especially if this card's in the back. So that's the purpose it's in there. It's just for brainstorming and milling and stuff. The next card is the red 0 Izuzu. Main purpose of this card obviously is just for search. I think this is the only card in the whole Log Horizon archetype that searches from your deck. So basically, when it comes in, you pay 1, discard a card, and then you search your deck for a magic or weapon character. It doesn't matter what you discard, so you can discard climaxes if you have a bunch of climaxes clogged in your hand and you're about to refresh. Might as well throw them in there so they can go into your deck so you can cancel more. But that's basically its main purpose, just to search. Just search out stuff you're missing, level 1 game, level 2 game, level 3 game, anything you're missing. Search it out. It works. This card works during any level. You just play it and use its ability. So that's the purpose that serves in the deck. The next card is the Assassin Akatsuki 0/0 Red. Main purpose, since it's a double reverser or a suicider, is just to get rid of your opponent's big stuff. Anything that they have that has like hardcore huge ass attack at level 0, you can just basically like run into it with this. And its pumping ability is actually pretty good because you can potentially get over your opponent's other zeros, because you potentially can get this card up to like 4k, anywhere to like from 4k to 5k if you play a climax, just by resting cards, because it doesn't have a restriction of, it's just rest 1. So if you have 2 cards in the back, you can potentially just rest them and now you are at 3k power. You play a climax and you're at 4. So you can get over some of your opponent's zeros, and then your opponent has to deal with this on their turn because it's a suicider, and if they attack into it, their card also gets reversed. So that's the purpose. It can also become pretty huge to get rid of your opponent's stuff without using its ability. But if all comes to worse, you can just run into it. As long as it's a 0. Just remember, zeros. So that's why it's there. In your level 0 game, you want to build up stock. So this basically exchanges out with your opponent's stuff. You basically 1 for 1 for your opponent. So that's just the main purpose this card serves in the deck. The next card is the Petite Natsugu. I know everybody runs the what's that guy? Sojiru, I believe, the level 00. That if your opponent has 3 or less cards on the field, making its 2k power. Honestly, after playtesting him for a long time, I never get its ability. It either gets sent to the waiting room with the double reverser or a suicider, or my opponent always has like a crap ton of cards on their field and he doesn't gain the boost. So that's why I like the Petite Natsugu better. Just because if you have the booster in the back, the 2 Mariels, he's a 3/5. So he's basically at the same power, I guess, as the Sojiru would be at this time. But by resting 2, you can gain a 1k power boost, and it lasts until the end of your opponent's turn. So basically, during your turn as well, you're at 4/5, and if you drop a climax, you're at 5/5. So this level 0 can hit up to 5/5, versus the Sojiru that only gains a 2k power boost during your opponent's turn, because he'll be anywhere from like 3/5 to 4/5 or so. But this card gets big, and this card also, since it keeps the boost, like the Sojiru will be almost at the same power. He'd be like around the same thing. But if your opponent has 3 or less, but this one keeps it guaranteed. So I find this working better for me than the other card. So that's why I run him instead of the other one. But yeah, basically its purpose is just to get big and get big during your opponent's turn. It can get killed with a double reverser or a suicider, but same thing with Sojiru. The only thing is the boost he gains is during your turn and your opponent's turn, so it helps you out both ways. So that's it for the level 0 game. Level 1 game wise, the level 10 Izu basically helps get rid of your opponent's level 1s and 0s because it's a level 1 and lower double reverser. It also comes more in handy because at level 1 your opponent starts paying stuff for cost, so it hurts them out more because you can run over stuff that they actually paid for. And then if they actually want to keep it alive and it does not have the encore ability, they have to like pay 3 and stuff just to keep it. But it helps out a lot, especially since your opponent starts to play or pay cost at level 1. So it helps you get rid of stuff, especially if your opponent has level 1 stuff that gets humongous for some apparent reason. So that's the purpose this card serves in the deck, is just removal, basically. Next one is, where is it? We'll go over this one. Just this level 10 Sojiru. So I was talking about the other Sojiru. It's a 00 blue. But obviously I told you why I like the Petite Natsu over it. But this card isn't bad, but potentially it'll be replaced by more of these, but I don't have any of these on hand. But still pretty good card because just when it comes into play, its main purpose is just being a beat stick. So when it comes into play and you have a Mariel, he gains a 2k power boost, so now he's at 7. And as long as you have a Mariel, so as long as you have 1 booster, he's anywhere from 7. The highest he can hit is 9. So you can be at 9k. Which is really good for level 1, so you can get rid of your opponent's stuff. After that, he just becomes a 6k beater, basically. And if you have the Mind Shock Punch, then you're seeing it at anywhere from like 9.5 and stuff. But that's basically its purpose. It just comes in, gets big, gets rid of something, and then it basically just goes back and forth. So that's basically just his purpose in there. It's just a beater. The Kotsky, Embarrassing Kotsky. I need to get more copies of this. But a pretty good card. So if you have, as long as you have 3 or more of their weapon or magic characters, it gains a 1/5 permanent boost. So I run this over the Shiro, the level 10 blue Shiro, just because it's base 4, and you have to have a continual 4 cards in your hand, and sometimes it's kind of hard to pull that off, especially since most decks are now like really aggro and they do all their stuff really fast and they get up to huge numbers. So even with the 1/5 boost, you're still at like 5/5, and your opponent can get rid of you. The only thing about it is that it has a damage encore, but you know, if you don't have enough cards in your hand and you take a damage and you're at 4k, you can't get over certain stuff, especially if your opponent has a level 1 game where it's big. So that's why I just run this, because It has 500 more power, and that 500 does help you out, believe me. So once you have your whole thing in the back, if you have 2 mirrors in the back, basically this thing's at 5-5. And as long as you have another card like on the side, you get your boost. So now you're seeing yourself at 7, climax 8. And then even if you like, as long as you have the 3 and you're at 6, Mario's in the back, you're at 7 basically. If you drop the punch, you're seeing yourself at 10-5. So pretty good. It's just basically just a beater card. That's basically all its purpose is in the deck. It's just to get up to 7 basically and just, you know, drop punch 8-5. So just beater purposes as well. Cause you and also I try to run light on the cost at level 1 because all your level 2 and higher game requires you to pay a lot of cost, but that's why this card is pretty good. Last one, even though there's 2 more, but I know I said cost wise you want to save up and stuff. But I'm pretty. I think this card is worth it. I think it's even better than the other level 1 Zero Shiro thing, just because it has the same damage encore and just it has more power, so it's at 6. If you have the 2 Marios in the back, it's at 7, and its ability to rest. It doesn't state how many. It's just rest 1, so you can spam it as much as you want. So as long, like this comboed with the Mario is really nice. And obviously the main purpose of this is just to be a beat stick that you can take a damage to bring it back. So it's a repeatable beat stick. And you can get this card up to big numbers. You can get, I've gotten it up to like 11 to 10k. So basically it's just a beater. Just to beat down your opponent. And then you can have field presence since you can take a damage to make it live. So that's the purpose of this. This is just a beat stick that you can bring back and like bring back by just taking a damage. Next card is the Mind Shock Punch. I really like this punch just because it's just a pay 1 and then you give something 3-5. At level 1, giving stuff 3-5 is really amazing. It helps you get over your opponent's, like, your opponent might attack for 8 and you're like, oh, I'm at 7, I'll drop this. Like, I'm way over you now, so you're dead. So the reason I run this is just because it's a level 1 punch. So you can just start playing this punch at level 1, giving your cards a 3-5 boost from level 1 game up to level 3 game. Helps out a lot for basically just cost of 1. So that's the purpose of this, just boosting your stuff up. Level 2 wise, the Mario just helps you get your cards from the waiting room back to your hand. That allows you to salvage so you can start playing your level 3 stuff or your other stuff. It basically gets any missing piece you're missing that is in your waiting room. That's why brainstorming and like other stuff kind of just benefits you just a bit, since you can like mill stuff and then just get it back with this. So basically its main purpose is just to when you play the climax. And this thing helps you out too. The main purpose of this is just to get free stock. Since this deck is stock heavy, getting free stock is really good. And this thing, you don't have to discard anything, so it doesn't minus you anything. You just have to take a damage. But it just allows you to basically make this a beater for a turn and get cards to from your waiting room back to your hand. So the main purpose of this is just basically to get cards from your waiting room back to your hand so you can play them late game. The Nyanta, the main purpose of this Nyanta is just to get cards from your opponent's back row to the front. So it basically punishes your opponent if they don't play enough cards. So if they leave like an empty slot, then like during your turn you can punish them just by choosing any card and moving it to the empty slot. Mostly you want to move cards in the back row to the front, so you get rid of your opponent's like boosters or their annoying boosters. So that's just basically the main purpose of this Nyanta, is just to kind of punish your opponent if they leave empty slots open, because you can potentially move cards around, especially cards in the back row that are kind of hard to get rid of. So that's just the service, the purpose he serves, especially at level 3 games, because sometimes your opponent gets smarts and they don't play characters anymore, so you can't get that Shiro whole boost combo thing up. So as long as your opponent has cards in the back row, you can just punish them by basically just bringing stuff from the back to the front. So that's just basically his purpose, just punishing your opponent if they leave any empty slots open, because you can potentially move stuff around, especially from the back. Where's the other guy? Oh no, we lost Rudo House Code. He's around here somewhere. Alright, there he is. He was stuck in between a bunch of cards. So the Rudo House Code, I just taken one. Level 2, pay 2 red. The main purpose is just, he becomes pretty big if you have a field full. He's potentially 10-5, so your opponent has to struggle trying to get rid of him, especially since you have your punch that gets you up to 14k. So basically his purpose is just there to be like a big beater kind of thing, and just burn your opponent. It helps you out during the late game, end game, just because obviously, you know, you can burn them for 5, especially if you look at their graveyard or their waiting room and they're running low on climaxes. So it's just the burn 5 helps you out. Either or deal 5 to your opponent so he loses the climax, or just burn him for 5 if he's like, obviously if he has like one more climax in his deck, like burning for 5. Especially if he has a bulky deck still, we'll probably go through. So that's just his thing, it's just burning tech. Next, the Natsugu level 3. Main purpose just to be in the middle, become a beater, and hopefully pull off your whole combo where he's huge, your opponent gains minus stock, or not minus stock, minus soul, along with the Shiro. So that's basically just the purpose of him, is just having him in the middle, and if your opponent can't get around him, you basically just start diminishing your opponent's resources. And that's basically all the purpose he serves. He's just a shield. You just put him in the middle, he gets big. Hopefully if your combo goes through, your opponent's going to get minus 4 soul, and they're going to have to attack into him, losing resources. So just his point in the deck is just becoming a big shield and like wasting your opponent's resources just by being there. So that's the purpose of this guy. The purpose of the Shiro is just for your opponent not to burn you, since his ability is your opponent can burn you with auto abilities. So if your opponent has crazy auto burn abilities, like, it doesn't matter to you because you're not going to get burned. The other purpose it serves is the power boost, since it gives 1k times your level boost to the front, allowing your level 3s especially to get humongous, so your opponent has to struggle with them. And the last purpose it serves is with its ability where as long as you reverse something, you can give something minus 2 soul. So obviously it combos with the Natsugu to the point where if you stack 2 of these, your opponent's going to get minus 4 soul, and they have to attack into the Natsugu. And if they have lower attack, then they're going to die. And then they're going to attack you for like no damage, and it's really good. Obviously your opponent can get around the Natsugu and stuff like that, but just the purpose of this is just anti-burn, boosting the crap out of your stuff, and then just potentially setting up that combo if you get lucky, basically. And if your opponent doesn't have any way of removing it and stuff, or getting over the level 3 Natsugu with like bounces and stuff, then like they're pretty screwed. Last card, obviously the gate climax is to salvage and get your characters 1k power and a soul. The main purpose of the Ninja Katsuki is just basically I heal when it comes in, and if I have the climax, I get huge and I can burn you. And that one burn does help you out, especially if you can get a couple of them out. At one point, I did get out like a whole field full. So if instead of going for the defensive strategy, you can go for the attacking offensive strategy. Especially if you have 3 of them if you have 3 of these in your hand and you can pay for it, it helps you out a lot because you get a heal 3, and not only that, your whole front row, as soon as you play the climax, is at 15 by itself, allowing you to basically get over almost anything your opponent has and burning them for potentially 3 if you have 3 of them out on the field. So the purpose this card serves in the deck is just as your final ditch effort, just burning your opponent for stuff and getting huge to get rid of your opponent's stuff that gets big. Especially if you have the Shiro behind this. If you have the Shiro behind this card is freaking enormous. It gets up to like 18k to like 21k attack power. So that's basically what this card is. Just becoming huge, getting rid of your opponent's stuff, and burning them for late game, end game, basically game. So that's it for this deck profile. I'll bring you guys more deck profiles and other stuff later on. So see you guys in the next video.